Greetings everyone and welcome to a special edition of T2's Book Club. Today I'm not going to review a book that I recently read. I'm going to review a ton of books that I read a long time ago. And you may remember my Brothers in Arms book I showed you recently on my book haul. This was the Dragonlance series, and this is Cameron and Rachel Magier. I've talked about this before, but I haven't gone into a lot of detail. I'm going to go into a lot of detail today about the Dragonlance novels. Tell you just what exactly was up with them, because I got my hands on something pretty cool. I'm going to show you some files. And so Dragonlance, I recently was Wikipediaing it, and they were based on these Dungeons and Dragons modules. So it's not actually, it didn't start out as a book. I remember this picture right here from being on the cover of one of the books, though, because they recycled it. But modules are basically like little campaigns that you play Dungeons and Dragons. You don't have to come up with your own story like I did when I played Dungeons and Dragons with Storm and Austin and all them. My dog's freaking out. So they're like pretty much ready-made adventures you could just go through, and you could play as these characters. Sturm Brightblade was like a knight. Goldmoon was like a healer. Tasselhoff Barefoot was a thief. I don't know if he was in the original one. Flint Fireforge was the dwarf, and that was like one of the early things that got me into dwarves. Some of the... Oh, I remember this picture. Big floating citadel. Oh, that's the art of the Dragonlance Saga. Yeah, here's Test of the Twins. This is like the... So like Tracy Hickman was the guy that wrote these modules for Dungeons and Dragons, and Margaret Weiss incorporated them into books. So like when I was reading these books, this was back in early high school, middle school maybe. My friend Paul had all these books, and he was into Dungeons and Dragons. He was my DM when we first started playing D&D, and he'd borrow them from him, and I'd like look at these pictures, like this one here. This is Tanis Half-Elven, or Tanis, and I would stare at this bow for like, I don't know how long. I'll be like, wait, how long have I been looking at this picture? I'll just be staring at it. Like, it's like wrapped with leather on top of some kind of fur, and it's like a recurve bow carved out of wood. And then you get to looking at their armor and shit, and like the intricate, the details of their daggers and stuff. And like this picture of Tasselhoff Barefoot. This is one of the guys. He's like called a Kinder. He's like a halfling sort of thief guy that they steal stuff automatically. They don't even realize they're doing it. And he has like this thing called a hoopak, which is it's a slingshot on the end of a staff, and it's got like this spear point, I guess, on the bottom. Like, you didn't even think about the spear point because they don't really talk about it in the books, but you look at the pictures like, oh, he can use it as a spear too if you want to, and whack people on the head with it. And there's like these draconians. They're like half dragon, like humanoids, that when you kill them, they do different stuff. Like one of them would petrify, one of them would turn into acid, so you couldn't stand there. So this is all kind of, if you think about it, that works in a Dungeons and Dragons sense. Like if you keep your sword in something too long, you're going to lose the sword. Or if you stand in that spot, it's like ground effects in Diablo 2. Like you can't stand there and take damage. So the books were like really kind of appealing to the Dragonlance modules for Dungeons and Dragons. The first three books, the what were they called? There's a whole story with like Huma and like these dragon lords, and they had they were forging the dragon lances to kill the dragons, because in this world there's like these gods, and they're actually like aspects of dragons around. Like there's the metallic dragons are good and the colored dragons are bad, and they all have breath weapons that are like what the hell is this? I remember having this card game, dude. These fucking, I remember this little symbol at the end. There's a Tanis Half-Elven one. Yeah, I had this card game. It was fucking sick. This is like Palin Magier. That's like or Parsalian. That's like he's the kid of Rachel Magier and some woman or something. I don't know. Like, you get so into this story, right? So, there's this place called Solace where they would always like eat. It's like an inn, and it's like a town. It's like the Ewok village, you know, like the inn's in the top of a tree. I remember this one scene where like they're always eating these spiced potatoes that this guy Odic makes, and somebody threw a dagger at the waitress, and she had like this wooden tray, the dagger stuck in and stuff. And like here's another thing, like Final Fantasy was in the early days back then, and you would see GamePro screenshots of it, and it would look like this. And they would name their characters after Dragonlance characters. Like the healer was always GM because it's Goldmoon. The warrior was always Huma. The thief was always Taz. And this dark wizard here was always named Race because that's Raceland. So that was like, what was that called? The first 3 trilogies. I forgot what they're called. I didn't even read them until after I'd already read the Twins trilogy, which I really like. That's Cameron and Raceland Magier. Like one's a warrior and one's a... He started out as a wizard of the red robes, which is neutral, and then he goes through this whole ordeal, and he like gets these eyes that can see time passing, and everything falls apart, and he becomes a black wizard and kind of goes bad and shit. Gets pretty deep. So those are those books. Here's some more pictures of like Raceland and Cameron. Here's like a blue dragon with Tasselhoff. Here's this picture here is pretty famous. This one, Riverwind the Plainsman. He was like Goldmoon's husband or something like this Indian tribe. And that's a Draconian right there. So all this shit is like a really good universe to make like a movie about. Which they should do now. There's been a bunch of people on Interest talk about like, or Pinterest, saying like this should be a movie. That's a pretty cool looking sword right there. So, let's see. There actually was a movie. This is the animated movie. It's not really that good. I'm going to play a little bit of it. It's got some pretty famous voice actors. The guy who played...
Based on the New York Times best-selling novel.
Michael Rosenbaum. The guy who played
Death.
The bald guy.
That is what
Smallville.
Featuring the
Lex
voices
Luthor.
of
Lucy Lawless.
Michael Rosenbaum. Dragonlance.
See, some of it's CGI and some of it's animated. It looks pretty dog shit. That's why they need to make a new one.
Army of dragons.
I don't remember pronouncing it Takesis when I was reading it. I think they spelled it weird.
Now, a handful of warriors must battle the
I mean, this kind of reminds you of the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon from the 80s, but
they hold dear.
I'm trying to download this movie and watch it, but it doesn't look that good.
Great courage be enough when the final battle begins.
I mean, everybody talks about like Forgotten Realms with the Drizzt Do'Urden, or however you say it. But Dragonlance is where it's at, in my opinion. World of Krynn, you got all these different dragons. It's like Game of Thrones, honestly. You got this big map. You've got like the knights of the... There are different orders of knights. There's Order of the Rose and the Sword and the Crown. And they have this Kingfisher symbol. And like there's the Undead one, which goes into the Ravenloft series. Ties that all together. Then there's like the dwarves and like the lower parts of the map. And there's like Quellenasti and Sylvanost and the different factions of elves you got to worry about, and then you got the whole war going on. It's pretty much like Game of Thrones. I think I started thinking about this recently because I just read the second book of Game of Thrones. So what I've got to show you guys today is one of the best. This is the Dragonlance Saga graphic novel. So as far as comic books go, this is pretty way up there. Look at this artwork. The cover is amazing. That's all the, what they call the companions. Raceland, Cameron, there's Tanis, Goldmoon, Riverwind. Her name is like Kitana or something. She's like Sturm's sister, maybe. One of them fell in love with. I forgot about that. And then this woman right here, I can't remember her name. There's Tasselhoff, and maybe that's the dwarf back there in the back. So then, like, let's go through some of this artwork. I'm trying to keep this all zoomed in good so you can see it. I think you just page down. Go to the new page. So this looks pretty dope. The artwork in the comic, it's kind of like almost painted or something. Wait, that didn't look. It's pretty weird. Okay, this is like Solace. This is the end. It's in the tree. So I remember reading this with my friend's book that I borrowed. I don't know if it's in this exact number 1 here. But there's this guy, Fizban. He's actually one of the gods that's come down to Earth, kind of like Jesus. and he's like trapped in this cage, and the Draconians, I think, were like transporting him somewhere, and they end up in a cage with him. And he casts this fireball spell, and the mage realizes it Raceland because he's using bat guano, which is one of the components that you use to make a fireball spell. So he's like telling everybody to get down because fireball is a huge area of effect spell, and it really kind of sounds like some Dungeons and Dragons shit. Was that in this one? Darkened Wood. Okay, that's him right there. That's Raceland. This is before he turns bad, so he doesn't have his hourglass eyes yet, which lets him see everything crumble away into the future. Hope there's no nudity in this, so I have to edit it. I don't think it's this one. Let's see what else we got. Number 2. That's one of the Dragon Lords of the Red Dragon Flight. You can tell because the dragon's red. So yeah, I highly recommend this series if anybody likes fantasy stuff. I mean, you ever see comic books like this? It's a fantasy comic book. Maybe there is, I just don't know about it, but... Wait. Right here, this is the one. I guess I'll have to wing it. This would work better, of course, if I had a little bit of bat guano on me. So he's casting the spell without the bat guano, actually, because he's a god, and he's just, like, can do stuff. I think he actually named himself Fistandantilus, or that's a different guy. I think that's the guy where Raceland, he takes over his tower, and he gets this Staff of the Archmagus. And he has these, like, floating beholder beasts or eyeballs or something that guards his tower. And it's pretty fucking dope. Quanos. So this is the Elven City. I don't know if I even read all of this when I was a kid. I just kind of glanced at it and looked at the pictures. You would think I would have been way into this. There's Paxtarchus. So that's like the Dwarven stronghold, like the Iron Forge of Kryn. Built on the side of a mountain, as always. There's also hill dwarves. And like when dwarves in the universe of Kryn would get married, they would take like... I think the man would have like a gold rod and the woman would have a silver rod, and they would forge them together. Maybe make like a bracelet or something out of it. I forgot what they do with it. But yeah, there's like so much stuff in this universe I've forgotten about. I'm just like thinking of when I'm looking back at it. That's why you gotta get it. I highly recommend.